Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about the important concept called array list here. So inside the array list, we discussed about the different kind of methods implementation, how each and every method is implemented. Okay. Now, if you observe carefully, add method with the different parameters we observe, and the next method add all we discuss here. So as well as equals method, hash code method, remove all method, like contains method, to array method, like iterator method. We have all the method which are available under the collection interface as well as list interface method we discuss here. Now, if you observe the hierarchy so far, whatever we discuss here, now you can see this is the collection interface. Okay, this is the collection interface, and the first the sublist call list here. Now, list internally it is implemented by this particular array list here. Okay, so this is the array list is one of the implementation of this particular list interface as well as collection interface, because some methods we copy from this particular collection and some of the unique method we are using under this particular list interface. So what are the unique methods we are using? So which are the method it is going to accept another parameter as an index here, because array list internally it is going to use the concept called arrays here. So because arrays are internally, it is going to work based on this particular index here. In the arrays is like index is going to play important role, like adding an element as well as deleting an element. So far, this is we discussed. Now another implementation of this particular list interface. Now that is we are going to discuss something like a linked list here. Now we need to understand here how this particular linked list is going to implemented internally. Okay, so we already familiar with the array list here. Now we'll try to focus on this linked list, how it is going to be implemented here. Now to understand this, now what is the class we need to create here? Here we need to create a object of this particular linked list. Now once it is completed, we go for this particular another class called vector. So vector is also one of the implementation of this particular list interface. Now we'll discuss later what exactly the vector is going to implement. First we'll focus on this particular linked list here. Okay. Now let me clear the console. Now we need to go to this particular one more class. Now here we discuss about the collection list here. Now I'm trying to create the something like a linked list test here. Okay, now whenever we created this particular linked list test, now I'm trying to create the main method. Under the main method, now what is the object we need to create here? Linked list. Now here, so this is important here, generic type, because all this particular in like collection frameworks all rewrite with the help of this particular generic here. So we need to provide the proper data type here. Earlier we discussed with help of this particular string here. Now we'll go for the integer related here. Okay, now I'm trying to provide with integer. Now here you can see linked list. Now here what you need to understand here, what are the different type of constructors we are having. Okay, so before discussing here, now in the array list here, what are the different type of constructor we are having? The first one is default constructor. Okay, first one is default constructor. Now second one is, so which is expecting the int as a parameter. So int as a parameter is something like a capacity. Now third constructor, what exactly the third one is doing? It is trying to take as a collections. Okay, it's like a multiple objects at a time we can pass to this particular array list. So these are the three different type of constructors we observe under this particular array list here. Now if we go to this particular linked list, what are the implement like constructors we are having under this particular linked list here? Now here you can see how many we are having. Currently we are having two constructors. The first one is default constructor. Second one, which is expecting collection as a parameter. Collection as a parameter is something like we can provide the multiple parameters at a time here, like multiple object as a parameter of this particular constructor. Now first we'll discuss about this particular default constructor. Now what exactly the default constructor is doing here? it is not doing any operation here. Now if you see this, so this is the internal implementation of this particular linked list. Now we are not doing any operation here. Okay. Now after this, so this is the default constructor. Now the second constructor, this is the second constructor. Now here if you observe, so linked list is the name of the class name, and it will be same for the constructor. But here you can see the parameter. What we are passing a collection as a parameter. Now whenever I'm calling this particular linked list, now internally we are calling this particular constructor. This keyword is something like the current constructor it is going to call, and what is the method we are calling? Add all method. So add all method internally it is expecting parameter. So now if you go to this, internally we are calling add all with the size. Okay, so something like here it is playing as a index role, size now playing as a index role. So with this method we already discussed in the array list class, the same method is implemented here. So now here you can see this is the add all. Now we are providing the index. Now in the specific index location we are going to pass this particular collection objects here. Okay, but now here what you need to understand here, linked list it is not going to store object under the arrays concept here, because the array list is going to store the object under the object array. But here the linked list it is not going to store under this particular array list, because internally linked list is going to use the concept called node here. Okay, now each record it is going to create a node. So this is, we'll call it as a node concept here. Getting the point? So this particular section of code we'll call it as a node concept here. Now what exactly this node will do? Now the node basically it is going to have previous node connection and the next node connection, and this particular section of code it is going to store as a value. Okay. Now this is, we'll call it as a value. Now previous node something like a pn, and the next node nn. Okay, so this is something like a connection between the previous node and next node. We are going to have this particular connections here. Now we'll see how these nodes are going to implemented here. Now you can see, now here if you observe carefully, the line number 92, what we are doing a node here. Okay, so what exactly we are doing here? This particular node here, node is basically it is a one object, like it's like a class here. Okay, so what you can observe carefully here, this is the node we are having. Now if I show you this particular node, what exactly it is going to do internally. Now I'm trying to go for the implementation of this particular node here. So this is the nested class where it is created under this particular linked list. Okay, this class it is not created outside, but this class is created internally inside this particular linked list here. Okay, so if we observe the previous classes, whatever we discussed as a inner classes concept is, so this is very important concept we are discussing here. Okay, this is one of the inner class concept here. Okay, now what you can observe carefully, private static class node, we are having class node here. Now this is the node next we are having, and node previous. Now what you observe here, whatever I created here. So now if you see this previous node reference we are having, and the next node reference we are having. Now this is the next node is going to point to this, and the previous one pointing to this. Now whatever this item something like a value. Whatever I explain here, value. Getting the point? This is very important here. Now what you need to understand here, so this particular section we'll call it as a node. The node can contain the three different information. The node can contain the previous node information, next node information, and value related information. So what you can observe carefully here, you need to understand how this particular nodes are going to created internally, how the each and every node is going to be have the relation between. Okay, now if you see now, so if we observe carefully, node we are passing a next node and previous node. So this next node internally again it is going to connect it to this particular node only. Now what you need to understand here, now whenever we are calling this node, it's going to have this information. Now here we are having a constructor. Okay, so this is what we need to understand here. Now we'll see how this particular node is going to use internally. Okay, going back to here, the class level, the linked list concept here. Now, what you understand linked list? Linked list internally, it is going to use the node concept to store the records here. Okay, this is we observe. Now, coming back to here, now I'm going to use the default constructor. Okay, we observe we have a two types of constructor. First one is default constructor. Second one is collection as a parameter. Okay, now after this, what you can observe, second constructor we'll discuss later. Now once in linked list object is created, now we need to call the methods. What are the methods we need to call? We have a familiarized method called add method. Okay, now first I will go to the add method, which is coming from the collection interface. So that here, this is an add method. Now I'm giving 10 value. Now I'm giving 10 value. So this is the first record we are trying to insert under this particular linked list. Now if you observe how this particular linked list add method is implemented internally. Now we discuss about the node, because using the node only the objects are going to store. Okay, come back here. Now any elements as of now, it is returning as a 0 here. Here you can see size is 0, because as of now we did not inserted any record. Under this particular linked list, we did not inserted any record. Now coming back to here, now I'm calling a add method. Okay, so this is the first method we need to call to insert the record into this particular linked list. Let me call this particular add method. Now value of, okay, anyway, now we'll see. Okay, so basically it is converting the value, because whatever I given, that is the value it's converting into integer here. Okay, so what is the parameter we provided? 10 value. Now here only it is saying value 10 here. Now what you need to observe carefully here, so which method we are calling? This is important. Which method we are calling? Link last method. Now this link last method itself, the name of the method is giving the information. Now whatever the value we provided, the value it is going to link to the last node here. Okay, currently what is the last node? As of now we did not create it. Now whatever we are going to create, that will treat as a last node as well as first node also. For the first and last node, now what happens basically? Only value we will have here. Only value section we are going to have. So there is no previous node and there is no next node here. Okay, now observe carefully how this concept is going to implemented internally. Now carefully observe last node. Where we define this last node? If you go to here, this is the first node and this is the last node we are having. Okay, but this first node as well as last node, both our objects are null. Now you can see first node is null, last node is null, because before this calling add method we did not insert any record here. This is the first record. Okay, now we came back to here, last node we are calling. Now here you can see what I am doing here. Now this particular section is very important. Now I'm trying to create a new node. Okay, now I'm trying to create a new node. But here what I'm trying to pass, what is L basically? What is L? L, it is referring as a last node. Okay, line number 145, we are trying to load the last node, but as of now the L also null and next node. Now here you can see next node also I'm making as a null. Now what you observe carefully, this section is null. Okay, and this section is also null. And here what is the value we are providing? E. Now if you see this, what is the E? E we are passing as a 10 value. Now the value we are trying to inserting as a 10 here. Okay, this is what we need to understand. Now after this, after creating this particular object, now what I am doing here? Now carefully observe. So this L, it contains the last node, but here if you see whatever the new node I created, the node I am trying to make as a last here. Okay, so this L is going to have the different information and this particular last is going to have a different information. Whatever newly created object we are having, now I'm trying to initialize into last node here. Okay, the last node, now it will contain the information. Now if you see, this is the last node. Now this last node does not contain the next and the previous here, only it contains this particular item value. Only it contains this particular item value. So what is the item value we are having? Now if you see this value, we are having 10. Okay, so currently we are providing this because this is the first node. It contains the previous and next node is null. Okay, we observe. So if this particular L is null, now what I am doing is I am making first node also. I am making first node also. This section only satisfy one time is whenever we are trying to inserting as a first record. From the second onwards, this if condition will not satisfy. Every time it will go to the next like else block. Now observe carefully. First time because of this it's satisfied with the first. Now what you need to understand here. Whatever the first node we are having. Now first node, this is the section. Okay. Previous node is null and the next node is null. Value 10 we are having. Now whatever this particular last we are having. So this is also same. Now this is also contain the previous node is null. Next node is null. Only value we are having. What is the value we are having? 10. So this is the current object we created. Okay. Current object we created. Now we observe this. Now after this what I am doing is I am increasing the size. So what is the current size basically? 0. Now it has become 1 here. So that once the size is increased, now what we can observe? The linked list is inserted one record successfully. Okay. Now this is we completed. Okay. We are returning true here. So whenever it is inserted successfully, we are returning true. Now if you see this, size returning as a 1. Now under this is the value we are having. Okay. So we inserted as a 10 value. Now this is completed. Now this is completed. Now what I am doing here, I am going to call the one more time here. Same linked list, the same linked list dot add method I am calling, and here I am trying to insert as a 20. Okay. So if you observe carefully, first we observe the first record, first and last it is having this information. Now second time I am calling same add method. Now we need to observe. Now we need to understand how it is going to implement it. So the first method we discussed here, so I'm ignoring this. Now I'm going to the second method. Now if you call this, it is going to call the value of, now finally I'm calling the add method. Again it is calling the same method called link last. Okay. So let me go for the internal implementation of this particular link last. And here, now if carefully observe, already the last we are having. So what is the last node we are having? This particular node. So this is the last node because in the previous method, like for the previous record, we already created the last and first here. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to load this particular last here. So if you observe carefully, so this particular two lines, now it will give you the more understanding about the relation between the previous node and current nodes. Okay. Now, so how exactly this node is providing the information? Okay. Now carefully observe what you need to understand is last node we are loading. So once we load this particular last node, now this is the new node we are creating. But while creating the second, while creating the current node, now what are the object I'm passing? Here if you see the first parameter I'm passing is a L. What is the L? L is the last node. Okay. Here we are having L here. L is basically last node. Now we are passing the L and we are passing the value and we are making the next node as a null here. And we are making the next node as a null here. Now what you need to understand here. So here we are trying to creating a new node with the value called 20. Okay. With the value called 20 we are trying to create. But here the previous node we are not making the null. We are making the existing last node. Now what you can identify, this previous node, now it is pointing to this particular last node. Okay, this is important here because here while creating the new node, I am trying to providing L. This particular L, now it will play as a last node here. Okay, so if you observe carefully, this particular section of code having the relation of this particular last node. Last node we are having the value called 10 and the current node we are having the value called 20 here. Okay, so this is the line, the 146 is providing this information. Now after this, now what you need to understand here, now whatever the last node we created, now this last node is replaced with a new node here. So whenever it is replaced here, now if you observe, it is changed here. But this node, now it is going to point to this particular section here. So previous node, next, sorry, value and next node. Okay. So this particular previous node, for this it is having null. Now it is having to this connection. Okay. This is the L here. This is the L. But this last now replaced with, earlier it was 10, now it is replaced with 20 because of this 147. Now what you understand here? So new record we created here, the new node we created here, the previous node, now it is pointing to this particular node. Now if you observe, whenever I'm trying to load the previous node, it will give you this particular 10 value. For this particular previous node, if you see the next, now it is going to have this particular 20. Now where I'm making this particular connection? So here. Now if you observe, here I'm making. Now you can see else block is satisfied. L dot next. What is the L? L basically it is a last node. Okay, last node. Last node dot next here. Getting the point? Last node dot next. Now here if you observe, for this particular previous, now I'm referring to this. For this particular next, for the last node next, now again I'm trying to refer to this particular node only. Okay, so this is very important here. So let me create a diagram little bit clear understanding it. So now here I'm trying to create a first. What is the first we are having? Previous node is null and value we are having 10 and next node is also null. Okay, this is the first node and last node. Now the last node, what happened basically here? Whatever the newly created, this particular node. Now if you see, the last node does not contain the previous node as a null. It contains the object here. Okay, the value we are having 20. But currently, this next we are having null. Currently, the next node we are having null. So if you observe, first node, the previous and next both are null. But for this particular last node, we are having previous node connection. Okay, but we don't have a next node connection. And what is the current object we created? So this is the last only the current object. This is the last node whatever we created. So that is will treat as a current node. So current node is something like a new node here. Okay. Now here, so again I'm trying to create the same node because here this is value 10. Okay. Earlier this particular section we are having null. And the next node also we are having null. And current record, whatever the current record I created, while creating this particular current record, okay, now I provided the last node reference. So what is the last node reference I provided? This is the section. Okay, the last node, now it is pointing as a previous node. So now previous node, this is the previous node. Okay, now previous node is observed. Now here if you observe here, the current line number 151, what I'm doing is L dot next. So this is the L. Currently, this is the L. This is the L we are pointing, and this is the new node. Okay, this is the new node, whatever we created. But if you see L dot next. So this is the L. Okay, this is the L. If I'm going to call L dot previous, this particular section we are going to call it as previous. But currently I'm calling L dot next. Now the next node, again it is pointing to this. So carefully observe, for this particular previous node, now we are pointing to this. Okay, but for the last node, next node is pointing to this. The arrows basically, now if you see these arrows, okay, for this previous node, arrow it is pointing to this. Okay, for the next, this is pointing to the current object. Okay, so this is very important. Now what I'm trying to explain, for the last node, next node is current object. For the current object, last node is, this is the, like for the current node, previous object is last node. Okay, so simply what you need to understand here, so this is the 20 value, sorry, so this is the 20 value we are having. For the 20 value, now if I want to see the what is the last node, that is called 10. Okay, for this particular 10 value, what is the next node? So that is called 20. So carefully observe, for 10, for this particular 10 record, now if I want to identify the next node or next value, so that is become 20. Now for this particular 20, now if I want to find out the previous value, now if I want to find out the previous value, so that is called 10 here. So now see the arrows how it is pointing. This is pointing the next and this is pointing as a previous. So same thing here, here it is applicable. For this particular 20 record, now if I want to find out the previous value, now it is pointing to this particular node. Okay, for this particular 10 record, now if I want to find out the next, now it is pointing to this. Okay, so this is very important here. Now this is the way we are making the relation between the previous node and the next node. Now if we observe this section of code, if we observe this particular section of code, you can easily understand how this particular linked list is implemented internally. Okay, so any questions? Any questions regarding this particular add method? Okay, so this is very important method we are discussing here. Okay, now what we observed so far here, now I'm trying to create. Okay, let me create a first again. So the previous I'm making null and while 10, sorry. Okay, so this is first record. Now what about the last record? Now last it is having object, like it is not a null. Now record called 20 and next node we are having null. Next node we are having null. So this is what we need to understand. This is what we need to understand here. Now observe, after this first and last, what we can do, after this first and last, now what you need to do, basically here, what is the current object? The last is the current object. Okay, now go back to here. Now I'm coming back to here. Now we are increasing the size is increased to 2. Okay, so we come out of this. So now one more time I'm going to call. Okay, now one more time I'm trying to call the same linked list. Now it is a simple now. Now here I'm trying to give 30 value. Now whenever I'm giving this particular 30 value, what happens internally? First it will load the last node. So this is a last node is going to create. Like last node is going to load. After loading this particular last node, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a one node here. One node. For each and every add method, we'll create a separate node here. Now what exactly it will do? The value we are having 30. Now while creating this particular 30 record, now what is this previous node we are referring? Whatever the current last node we are having, the last node we are making as a previous node. Okay, so that for this particular previous, now it is become this particular last node. For this particular previous, it is become this particular last node. So now this is fine. Now again, now here we are having null. So I want to replace this particular null because, so now last node is going to replace with this particular record. That is the last node here because 20 it is going to have previous node and last node information. Now whenever I'm trying to inserting for this particular next node, now it is pointing to this. Okay, so that here this section of code is going to have null, but here this is not a null now. It is having some object relation. It is having some object relation. So here also we are having object, but here also we are having object, but here we don't have an object. Basically, we can easily understand for the last node, the next node is null. Okay, for the first record, previous node is null. For the first record, previous node is null. So this is what we need to understand here. Okay, now observe carefully how it is going to implement internally. Now let me call this. I am trying to execute the same, the 30 record here. Okay, so now go back to here. Now you can see link last. Now what is the value? 30 value. Okay, so going for the internal implementation. Now I am loading the last. Now if you see this particular L, what is referring here? Item 20. Okay, so as of now, item 20 is the last node because the last node next does not contain it. But for the last node, we'll have a previous here. Getting that? If you see, previous object we are having, but next object we don't have. The next object itself it is trying to return as a null. Now, what you need to understand here. Now, while creating this particular new node, what I'm doing here, the last node I'm making, last node I'm trying to make as a previous reference here. So here we created. Now, the new node, if you observe carefully, this is the new node, 30 value. So the new node also we don't have a next value. As of now, the new node also we don't have a next value, but for this particular record, we have a previous node reference. So same thing, if you say this particular L, same it is applicable. Next node is null, but previous node we are having objects. Previous node we are having objects. But what you need to understand here, for this particular L, because of this particular block, now I'm making the next with this particular new node here. Okay, so if you see last node, okay, last node is modified now. What is the last node? Earlier it was 20, but currently the last node it was 30. Okay, now you can see 30 is the last node now because next value is null and previous we are having. But here if you see, so earlier we call it as a L as a last node, but now the L is going to be replaced with 30. How it is going to replace here? Here the last node we replaced already, but here if you see L dot next. The L dot next earlier it was null. Now I am replacing with this particular current node. Okay. Now if you see the L record next is having and previous is also having. So this node will not call it as a last here. So which we can call it as a last here. Now if you see this will call it as a last because next every record for the last record the next node will be null. Okay. So the 30 now playing as a last node. What about the 20? 20 will not play as a last node because 20 so is having previous and the next. Now if you see the next, it is providing the 30. Okay, if you go to this particular previous, it is providing the 10. Okay, so because this 10 is the first record. So as I suggested, for this particular previous, for the first record, previous node is null, but first record next we are going to have. So now you can see next we are having, but previous we don't have. So what is the next we are having? Again it is same, 20 only. For the 20 we are having next and previous. Okay, so this is the hierarchy. So it's a simple, but we need to understand how the each and node it is having the internally communication. So currently size is 3, mod count. Now we are coming out here. Currently how many objects we inserted? 3 objects. Now if you print this linked list, so how we can print it? System.out. Okay, currently I'm trying to run this example so that it will try to print 10, 20, 30. 10, 20, 30. How it is printing this 10, 20, 30 with this particular array bracket format here. Okay, now that we need to understand. So to understand this particular format, what you need to understand first, you need to understand the toString method. Okay, so toString method you need to understand. How this particular toString is going to be implemented internally. Okay, let me go for this particular linked list. Let me go for this particular linked list here. Now this is the linked list. Now here print it like find out the toString here. Under the linked list, now we don't have currently toString. Now whereas we'll see this whether in the array list we are having. two string. In the array list also we don't have. Now what we can do? Now linked list is internally is extending from this particular one abstract class. Now what is the abstract class? Abstract sequential list. Now here if you observe two string, here also it is not there. Now if you go to this abstract list, now we'll try to find out here whether we are having two string here. No. Now what is the last section we need to identify? Abstract collection. Now here I'm trying to see here. Here we are having two string. Now finally what you understand here, the two string which is going to call from the two string which is going to call from this particular abstract collection is one of the abstract class. Under the abstract collection we are having this particular two string here. Okay, so now if you observe here, we need to understand about the iterator. So how the iterator is implemented under this particular linked list, because we already familiar with the iterator, how it is implemented under this particular array list class. But now we are discussing about the linked list class. Okay, we'll see this iterator later. We'll come back to this particular two string here. Now go back to here linked list just here. Now I want to discuss about the linked list dot iterator. Linked list dot iterator. Later we'll discuss about the section called two string. Okay, 3 records we insert. So the size itself is giving us a 3, 10, 20, 30. Now we observe. Now finally, iterator, we need to call this iterator. Now to call this, now I'm going for this particular iterator. Internally, what is doing this? Internally, what is doing this? Now it is calling the list iterator. List iterator is one method it is calling. Now I'm going internally. Now here you can see list iterator. Now I'm passing this particular index as a 0. Like one, we are having parameter. The parameter value I'm providing as a 0. So this also I'm calling. Now what you need to understand here. Now what you need to understand here. So check position index. Because here we are providing the index value. Now I want to check this position. Now here you can see is position index. Now we are having a one method. Now we need to debug this particular method, how it is implemented internally. Now go to this is position index here. Now index greater than or equals to 0 and index less than or equals to this particular size. Now what is the size? 0. Size is 3. Okay, index basically 0. Okay, so index basically 0, so that the size is little bit bigger value, and index it is having 0, so that this particular condition is satisfied. So greater than or equals to and less than or equals to. Because of this, now it is satisfied this. Now we are coming out of this. Now whenever it is returning true, we are checking this particular false condition, so that this has become false here. It is not going to throw any exception. We are coming out here. Okay, so we identify the check position index, how it is implemented. Now here, what you need to understand here you need to understand the list ITR. List ITR. Okay, so this is very important section we need to understand. The same list ITR we already discussed in the array list class. But in the array list, what we discuss here, we come up with a for loop and we discuss about the equals method, so that we find out the current object and we return here. But in the linked list, now we are not using the arrays concept. We are using the node concept. Now because of this particular node concept, now if you see, this is the list iterator. Like list ITR is nothing but list iterator we are having. Now these are the two nodes we are having, next node and previous node. Now next index and expected. Like so this is something like when we are performing multiple threads at a time. So this particular expected mod count and mod count we are doing. Now this is a simple, we'll discuss later when we are having the multi-threading related concept here. But what you need to understand here, these three important. Last node, like next node and next value. Okay, next index value, something like next value, how it is implemented internally. Now come back to here. Now what we need to discuss about this particular next index here, we'll see. First one is has next and the next method we are having. Two method as previous method. Okay, next index, previous index. Now we are having remove method as well as set method and add method. So these are the methods we are having under this particular list iterator. List iterator. What are the methods we are having? Now here I am going to write one by one. First method. Has next, and as previous. And previous. Okay. After this, we are having set method, and here we are having add method and remove method. These are the specific method we are having under this particular list iterator concept. Okay. These are the methods we are having currently under the list iterator. Now we need to discuss one by one how it is implemented. Okay, because whenever I'm calling the iterator, finally it is time to create this particular list iterator object. Okay, coming back to here. Now we are trying to creating this. We are coming out of this. Now finally it is returning this particular iterator here. Okay, now we observe this particular iterator. Now we observe how this iterator is implemented. Now I'm coming back to this particular toString method. So because the toString, it will give you how these objects are, how this particular objects we want to print as output here. Okay, now that is the section we are doing. Now iterator I'm loading it. Now this is the iterator we are having it. Now here I'm checking has next. If this particular has next does not contain any record. Okay, this has next basically what it will do. Whenever we are having next values, it will return true. When we don't have a next value, it will return false. When we don't have this particular next value, it will return false. So this is what we need to understand here. Now coming back to here, currently, so that is not satisfied here. It's coming out of this. Now we are creating the string builder. So this string builder we already discussed in the previous sessions here. Now what I'm doing, append method I'm calling. So what exactly the append method will do? So based on this particular append, I'm going to add the additional string as the whole string buffer object here. Append is something like, for example, I'm having AB. Okay, I want to append with CD also. I want to append with end of this particular AB. So it is going to do by this particular append method. Now after CD, I want to append with some additional EF. But this EF, now it is appending as a last element. Okay, for the existing object, now it is going to append it as a last element. So that is going to be taken care by the append method here. Okay, coming back to here. So we discuss about the append here. Now going below here. So what is we are doing here? This is the infinity loop. So this is basically infinity loop. Now even though we are using the infinity loop, now what I'm doing here I'm checking this particular has next. So this is very important. This particular has next is going to provide. Now after calling this particular has next, now here I'm trying to load the next value. The next method basically what exactly it is doing, it is trying to return the current value. Okay, it is trying to return the current value. Now if you go to this internal implementation, now where we are now currently under this particular linked list here. Okay, now I'm trying to check this particular next how it is implemented. So checking for the co-modification. So this is not needed because we already identified this method whether the mod count and expected mod count both are same or not. So that is only the condition it is implemented under this particular check for co-modification here. Okay, now coming back to here. So this is I'm checking has next. So currently has next, it is going to return as a true. Now next we are having. What is the next basically? So next is a first record. Getting the point. Now if you see how I'm saying the first record, item is the value 10 and the previous node is null. Whenever the previous node is null, we'll call it as this is the first record. Now the first record we are trying to store under the next node. Okay, so this is completed. Now this we'll call it as a last return here. But here if you see, next not next dot next, next dot next. Whenever I'm calling next dot next, so this is going to return. Now what is the next record we are having? 20. Next record we are having 20. The 20 record we are trying to store into this particular next node here. Okay, so that is we did. Now after this, now what I'm doing here, next to node, next index plus plus, next index plus plus. By default it is 0. Now I'm increasing with this particular one. So finally, now what you need to understand here, so this is important, we need to understand. Okay, this is important, we need to understand here. Here last node we are passing, and next node also we are initializing into this particular node. But finally, now if you see last return dot item, now I'm not returning entire node object, just I'm returning under the node whatever the item value we are having. So this is very important here. Now if you see this is the last return node, but I'm trying to return only this item. I'm not using this next node and previous node, just I'm calling the item, so that the item value, like whatever the parameter value we provided, the value it is going to return here. So this is the last return dot item. Now what is the value it is going to return here? Something like 10 here. Now if you see here, it is providing this particular 10 value. Okay, it is providing this particular 10. Now finally what you observe, whenever we are calling toString, internally we are calling the next method. The next method is trying to return the current object value called 10. So now it is returned. Now we are going here. Now what you are doing here, here we are having 10 value. So this next method internally it is trying to return as a 10 value. Okay, so this we observe. But here I am checking this condition. Okay, so this is some condition we are having here. Now what exactly the condition I'm doing? Now if you see, so this is a E. Now if it is matching with this particular current object, but what happening? It is not matching this. Okay, double equal operator we are doing it. Now it is not going to satisfy this condition, because here it's saying it is returning false. Now whenever it is returning false, so now it will go to this particular E. Now what you understand here? Already we are having one append here. So this is the open bracket we are having. Now this particular SB dot append, it is going to append with the value. Now here you can see. So here if you see this, bracket is open and value is added. Now here this is important. Now what I'm doing here, this is what is doing here, it dot has next. If we don't have the next value, okay, if we don't have the next value, now what it will do, it will close this bracket. It will close this particular bracket here. But currently we are having values here. Okay, this condition now it is not going to satisfy. This particular condition now it is not going to be satisfied here. So what happens internally? It will go to below. Okay, this condition is now not satisfied. Now coming back to here. Now what is doing basically? First append it is adding comma. Second append it is giving space, so that the object it is going to look like this. Now bracket is open, 10 comma and some space here. So second record it will start from here. Second record it is going to start from here. Now if you see, whenever I'm trying to come out of this 476 line, now you will see the same output like this here. Okay, now if you see this, so 10 and comma and some space. Now here you can see this is okay, open bracket, 10 value and comma. Now this is the space we are having. Now after the space we are going to insert a new more record, like whatever the new record we are having. Okay, first record, the first value we appended. Now we are going for the second record. Now second record, how we are inserting here. Okay, second record how we are inserting. Now from here it will go to this particular loop. Now we are under the infinitive loop here. So second time it will call it. Second time same next method is calling. Okay, now go to the next method. So this is the next method. Checking here. Now earlier, so this is the next whatever we have. Now the next I'm passing into the as a last return. Now what is the next we are having currently? If you see value 20 value. Now the next node, now I'm initializing into this particular last return. Last return is completed. And next dot next. Okay. Next dot next we are having. Now here, now what you need to understand here. So this is the 20 and this is the next we are returning. Now what is the next here? 30. Okay. So 30 is going to store as a next here. Now completed. Item value. Now what is item value? We are trying to return as a 20. We are trying to return as a 20. Here you can see 20 is returning. So now it will go back to the next here. Now same. Now it is appending with the 20 here. Now if you see this, now if you observe, this is important now. Already open bracket 10 comma space we have. Now after the space, now this 20 is going to be inserted. The 20 is going to be appended here. Now if you see this, 20 is came. Okay. So to understand this, here you can see this 20 came here. Okay. After the space, now we inserted 20 record. Now again we are checking here. For this record, it is not going to be last record. We have a one more record here. Now it will come back to the below statement here. It will come back to the below statement. Now same, comma and space. Now comma and space. Now going for the next record and the same next here. Now last record. This is the next. Now this is the last record because the next we don't have a value. So that we'll treat as this is the last record. Now what is item? 30. This particular 30. Now we are going to return it. So now next dot next. Now what we are having? Null we are having. Okay. So index and last dot item. Now if you see this, now this condition will satisfy now. This particular condition will satisfy. Now why it will satisfy here? Now you need to understand how the has next is implemented. Now go to here. So what is the next index we are having? Currently 3. Now what is the size we are having? 3. Okay. So next index is 3 and the size also 3. So that what happens basically? It is trying to return as a false. Whenever it is trying to return as a false, here we are having not operator. The not operator basically it will work as the opposite. So that it will return as a true here. Now satisfied this. Earlier this method, this particular line 476 executed, but currently this is executed. Now if you observe carefully, whenever it is executing, here we are trying to do the return here. Return. So whenever we are doing the return, it will not come back to this particular line. So this is the main advantage we are going to get from this particular return statement. From whenever any line we are trying to return here, it will come out of the particular method here. Now what you are understanding is, so 30 we inserted. Now it will appended with this particular closing bracket here. Now finally it is trying to return from this particular toString method. Okay. So same output we are going to print as our console. This is the same output we are trying to print on our console here. Okay. Now if you see this, we are coming out of this here. Okay. Now here you can see open bracket 10 value comma space. Now this is the space and 20 comma and this is the space. Okay. And the 30. So after the 30 we don't have a additional records. Now we are making, getting the point. Now we are closing this particular brackets and we come out of this. Now this particular format, it is printing from which method? It is printing from the toString. Okay. So now any questions regarding this particular iterator as well as toString method? So important method we discussed here. Still anyone having any questions? Okay. Now, if we don't have, what another important concept we need to understand here. So here, basically, we discuss about the one add method. So which is coming from the collection interface. Now, if I'm going to add this method, linked list dot add. So second method, which is expecting 2 parameters. For example, size is 3. In the fourth size, now I want to add 40. Okay. This is the add method we are having is expecting two parameters. Is expecting two parameters here. Now here, what you need to understand here, I am debugging this application. One more time, I am trying to debug this so that we can understand how it is implemented. These are the three add method we already observed. Now we need to debug this add method, how it is implemented internally. Okay, going back to this add method. So this is the value of method is taking here. Now go back to the add method. This is the add method. But whenever we are adding with a position something like a index here, every time this method is going to be take care as a first priority. Like this is the method is going to take as a high priority. Why it is going to take as a high priority? Because here now within the size we are going to insert the object. Now if you see this, I am giving index as a 4. Now if I am going to internally, now is position index. I want to discuss about the is position. Now if you see index I'm having 4. Okay, this is a 4. Now it is getting equal to 0. It is satisfied. But to index is basically 4. Now size we are having 3. Now the index value, it is bigger value compared to this particular size. So because of this AND operator, one is satisfying and the second one is failing. So that whole expression will fail here. Whenever it is fail, whenever this whole expression is failing, now we are using the NOT operator, it will satisfy. Now it will satisfy. Now you will get a message something like this. Now you will get this exception, index out of bound exception. Now if you see this, it is throwing an exception. Throw no index out of bound exception. Now what exactly it is saying here? Index is 4, size is 3. Index is 4, size is 3. Now what you are going to understand here? Now what you are going to understand here? Here you are going to understand here, whenever we are trying to work with this particular index as a parameter, those information we need to provide within the size. Okay, within the size. Here size we provided as a 3, like current object we are having 3, but in the fourth index location now I'm trying to inserting. So this is not applicable here. If you want to do the with the index, you need to provide within this particular size here. Within this particular size here. Okay, let's see how it is going to be implemented here. Now I'm going to provide 3. So now this is within the size. Now whenever I'm providing this is within the size, now what happens internally? So this particular object now it is going to be replaced. So we will see that how it is going to be replaced here. Linked list, 3 objects. Now this is the one more add method I'm calling with the 2 parameters. Okay. So check position. Now if we go to the check position, now again go for this. Both are now true. Earlier whatever this particular right side one, so this particular part of code it is returning as a false. Because of that it is throwing an exception. But currently if you see, both are returning true. Okay, both are returning true. Now whenever this returning true, the expression it will become false because we are using not operator. Here we are using not operator. If it is true, it will become false. If it is a false, it is become true. Okay, this section of code is going to be implemented. Now this condition will not satisfy. We are not going to throw an exception. We are coming out of this. Now if you see, we are coming out of this particular 565. But earlier we went to this particular line. Okay. Now coming back to here, we are checking index. Index we given as a 3 and the size we are having 3. Now what is doing here? Here it is going to link as a last. Link as a last. Now which method is calling? Link last method. So this link last method already we observed. Okay. Now we'll go to this method. Now if you see this, how it is going to call. Now last node. What is the last node? Already we are having the particular 30 record. Now if you see this, last is a 30 record. Okay. Item is 30, next is null and previous we are having. Now what I am doing is, I am creating one more node. Okay, I'm creating a one more node. Now here, I'm passing this particular last node as a previous node. Now you can see, new node is going to have this particular information, 40, and the previous node we are passing. What is the previous node? 30. Previous node is 30. Okay. Now this is the new node we created as of now. Okay. Last node. Whatever the newly created node, that is called 40. Now we are replacing as a last node. After this, we are checking. Now here we need to call the L dot next. L dot next. What is the L? L, it is having 30 value. L, it is having 30 value. Now we are going to replace with the next as a 40. Next as a 40 here. Size is increased. So what is the size currently? 4. So this is we need to understand. Okay. This is we need to understand. Now 10, 20, 30, 40 we are printing here. This is all about all the record. Now if you observe how it is implemented internally, how we are having it. So first 10, 20 and 30 and 40. Okay. So this is we'll call it as a first record. Why? Because here previous node is null. This is null. So currently these are the 4 nodes we created. Okay. Now previous node is null. Now so here this for the last record, this is we call it as a null. So that we'll call it as a last node. First node we observe, last node we observe. And between these two, how we are having relation. Now if you see this previous node, it is having this. Okay. But this previous node, it is having this. Okay. The 20 previous node, it is having this. These are the relation we are having. Now if you see, next node is this. Okay. Next node is this. And for this particular record, we are having this. And here, so this is a null we are having, and last we are having null. So carefully observe how I am providing the arrow. This arrow from starting point to, this is the starting point, like we'll call it as a previous. This previous node is this. And for this particular previous node is this. And for this particular previous node is this. And next here. Now this is the next node. For this next node, this is the next node. And next node. This is the main hierarchy we are having. Main hierarchy we are having for this particular records. Okay. So this is what we need to understand, how this particular objects are having internal communication this. So far, add the 2 types of add method we discussed here. Add method, which is not going to take index as a parameter, only the object as a parameter, something like element as a parameter. The second add method, along with the element, the index as a parameter is going to take. So these two we observe here. Okay, these two we observe. Now, what is another important here? Now, add all method. After this, remove method. So these two are the important concepts. So this will continue in the tomorrow session. Okay. So anyone having any questions or regarding about so far whatever we discussed linked list concepts here? Okay. Now if we don't have anything, so I'm stopping the session up here. We'll continue tomorrow.